The Property Education Foundation, we're actually 25 years old this year. It's a foundation that was built to promote the property industry as a great career for young people, students and young graduates. And throughout that time we've given numbers of scholarships out, had quite a number of interactions with industry. Only the other night a group of us were at Curtin University and Meet the Leaders, where we had lots of students talk to individual property leaders. So the idea over this time has been to try and promote property as a career for young graduates. And it's amazing, you know, you go to a lot of school evenings to say that property is a profession, and you talk to some of the mums and dads that come with their kids, and they all don't have any idea of the breadth of this industry. They think property is basically the suburban real estate agent. Nothing against those guys, but you know, property's a lot more than that. So we're trying to build that. We're going to say it is a great career for you.
So what's happening out at Carousel? So as I said, the project's already underway, which will see us go from 82,000 square metres to 110,000 square metres and open late next year. We've announced recently that we're adding in David Jones into all 3 of our shopping centres, and Carousel will be the first of those to open, and that news has been really well received by our local shoppers. We're also introducing new international and local mini majors, a new fashion mall with over 60 new stores, a new dining and entertainment precinct on the rooftop with 12 new restaurants, and new shopper services including a new multi-deck car park and valet parking. You can see this is an artist impression of our new fashion mall. So for those of you that are familiar with Carousel today, it was last redeveloped in '99, so it hasn't had a lot of work done to it since then. The artist impression that you can see there really transforms Carousel to that higher level of finishes, beautiful stone floors, lots of natural light, beautiful sculptures and luxe seating areas. The one I'm really excited about though is our restaurant precinct up on the roof. So this will connect up to the existing Hoyts cinemas that's there currently. As I said, introducing around 12 new restaurants. And again, really focused on the lush landscaping, beautiful water features. You can see in the picture there the amphitheatre where you can have, if you want an ice cream or takeaway, and go and sit and listen to the buskers or performers that will be in that space. So personally, I can't wait until this is finished so I can go and have a glass of wine out there, because I think I'm going to need one by the time this project's finished. So to put that in perspective, I think the slides have got a little stretched, but to put that in perspective, the existing centre you can see in the light pink and light green, and the new centre you can see in the darker pink. So the big red box is the new David Jones. You've got the mini majors in purple and the new fashion stores in dark pink. So connecting the old centre down towards the Western Mall and then reconnecting up near Coles. The car park in the far right hand corner you can see is our new multi-deck car park. So if you're familiar with the site, that's where KFC and Hungry Jack's were. And that will be opening before Christmas this year, which is really exciting for those of you managing shopping centres. To get car parking back open is absolutely critical. With the rest of the retail opening late next year. On the rooftop, as I said, this is the beautiful new restaurant precinct. So this dark green is the new restaurants. The red is the second level of David Jones, and the pink, the purple, the entertainment spaces. And you can see that that connects up with the existing Hoyts cinema. The centre today is probably the older style from the 90s, where it's a bit of a beige box and everything happens on the inside. So as part of the redevelopment, we will be activating the facade along Albany Highway and truly making it a more enjoyable, visible space, both internally for our customers and externally presenting out to the local residents. So I'd like to probably finish by just sharing the fly-through of Carousel, and so you can get a bit of a look and feel of what it's going to look like. And as Joe said at the end of the evening, happy to take any questions.
Perth retail. It's been an interesting question given the turn down in the economy lately, but as we can see that a lot of the major owners, Scentre Group, ourselves, AMP, are certainly well advanced in our planning to redevelop our centres, is really because of the caps that were in place, which are a town planning restriction that were lifted back in 2010. So artificially, all the centres in WA have been restricted compared to the rest of the Commonwealth. Greater Brisbane, for example, has a population of 2.3 million people, and it contains 4 super regional shopping centres over 100,000 square metres of GLA. In comparison, Greater Perth has a population of similar number, a little bit less, but contains no super regional shopping centres, and with one only over 90,000, which I believe is Joondalup. So we all saw there's been certainly an artificial restriction on our giving our customer what they need and what they want compared to the rest of the country. If we look at the average floor space provision, it's around 2.4. In Western Australia, it's about 1.8 square metres of retail per person. For a comparison, Sydney is around about 3.2 square metres of GLA per person. So you can see that Western Australian retail is certainly underdone compared to the rest of the country. So what you might be interested in, given this as a retail discussion, is some of the things that we look at in making up the things that we need to really focus on when we're doing a development. So Galleria is a shopping centre that we have owned since 2003 under a former guise of Centro. We're very lucky that our joint venture partner, the Perrin Group, Mr. Byers here, is going to speak to you tonight, bought in 2012 and is a 50% owner with us. So what are we looking at? We look at what the total trade and the area is, and we break that down into the main trade and the primary trade. At the moment, Galleria's got about 450,000 people in its total trade area, about 235,000 in its main trade area. We see in 2020, when we're probably going to finish our development, about 500,000 people in our total trade area, or about 250,000 in our main trade area. Our population growth, we're seeing around about, in our main trade area, about 1.5% per annum, where the national average is about 1.4%. In 2020, we estimate that the retail spend that we can draw on is about $7.3 billion, rising to about $9 billion in 2026-27. Galleria in Morley is a strategic metropolitan centre, so it has an importance in the planning hierarchy when you're doing planning. Under the State Planning Policy 4.2, it sits as one of the 10 strategic metropolitan centres, and it's located about 8 k's from the city centre, which is interesting in itself because I think in the Commonwealth there's only 2 or 3 other centres of a similar size or larger that are located so close to its CBD. Just a quick update on where we're at. We just achieved last year a JDAP approval for 179,000 square metres. I'm very proud of that, from being the largest approval in the state. It gives us, not that we're going to produce 106,000 square metres of GLA on day one, but it allows us the ability to expand Galleria over time in a manner that we see fit. We've also got approval for a short-term accommodation tower of 144 rooms, plus a 7,500 square metre office tower, which again goes towards the mindset of the community through the council and through the Western Australian Planning Commission, the Department of Planning, to densify the strategic metropolitan centres and to produce other uses apart from just retail. So that's an objective of the state, and so we're certainly working with them closely to deliver on that. So these are just the plans from the actual DA that we got approved. We've got 3 levels approved. These plans are of course evolving, but we've got to deliver a town square, which is on the top there along at Bishop Street. We're going to create a plaza to Russell Street and integrate the bus station that's currently next to the site that we lease to the Public Transport Authority on a long-term lease. That's the second busiest, I believe, bus station in the metropolitan area. So a great asset to have at your doorstep. We're looking at new food courts, dining courts. We need to do a whole lot of road upgrades around the centre. Relocation of the basin is a key component, and of course new landscaping. So that's just a flavour of the plans themselves. Again, keeping some of the current majors where they are and working around with them. Just some quick before and after shots of what we're going to hopefully deliver in a couple of years' time for the community.
So who is the Perrin Group? We are owned by Stan Perrin. We have 11 more shopping centres than we have shareholders at the Perrin Group. Stan is 94 years young and still going strong. I believe he is the second oldest working billionaire in the world. So what have we done? What do we own? So in Perth, we own 100% of Belmont, Coburn and Mirrabooka, and 50% of the Galleria with Vicinity. The other 8 centres that we have are in joint venture with Centre, so it's the Westfield, Vicinity Centres and Mirvac in Sydney. So I should also mention we own half of the building you're sitting in as well. So despite all you've heard about Amazon over the last couple of months with their entry into the Australian market, we still love shopping centres. So we had a pretty active year last year. We ended up buying 50% of Westfield Woden in Canberra right before Christmas. And mid-year we bought half of Runaway Bay on the Gold Coast with Vicinity. We also managed to dispose of Campbelltown Mall in Sydney, which we owned 100% of at the time. I should say as well, we've also kicked off a $250 million development at the Glen in Melbourne, and that's our share, so the total development is almost $500 million. So we're quite confident about the future of retail in this country. So just a little bit of a different tack with my presentation. So I just wanted to talk very high level about what's going on in the industry. So as you're all aware, there's other things driving this, but with the e-commerce, the Amazons of the world are driving a bit of a change in the industry. It's certainly, we're not worried about the end of shopping centres. We do see, however, that there's some retailer profitability issues coming forward, and that's causing a lot of the consolidation that we're seeing. So our view is that consolidation means that we'll see two things happening. We'll see some of the bigger centres getting bigger and better with a wider range of particularly fashion uses, whereas some of the sub-regionals and neighbourhood centres have to hit their convenience aspects much better than we have. So it's still about placemaking, it's still about getting some non-retail uses involved, but it's not necessarily about getting bigger to get better. Okay, so a lot of the trends in retail at the moment, you'll see this particularly on the East Coast. We are a long way behind in WA from the national and international benchmarks. Food and beverage precincts, we've obviously what Kate was showing at Carousel will be a cornerstone of what they're delivering at Carousel. We delivered an 8-restaurant food precinct at Coburn 2.5 years ago. Fresh food, I'm yet to see a really good fresh food environment here in Perth. There's a smattering across the East Coast in some of the larger centres. Again, Westfield are doing that particularly well at Miranda, Warringah, Garden City, Mount Gravatt. There's some great examples of how that should be done. Entertainment, again, we don't do that well here. Opportunities to really grow our cinema offers and our food, bowling, entertainment uses around that. Placemaking, You saw that in the carousel fly-through. We'll be delivering that at Galleria. And certainly the next stage of Coburn. Technology is how we deal with the threat of e-commerce. So it's about getting Wi-Fi platforms for the shopping centres. We have a collection bar at Broadway in Sydney, with what we own with Mirvac, where you can order from the Iconic and have it delivered to the shopping centre as opposed to your apartment, which is a bit difficult. So there's all those sorts of things going on in the background as well to make sure that we are there for the e-commerce revolution. And we still think people want to shop. So as Andrew mentioned in his presentation, there's a huge undersupply of regional quality retail space in Perth. Last I saw, the number was about 300,000 square metres short of the benchmarks from the East Coast. So it's 3 and 4 regional shopping centres short from a population basis here. So what we're entering into now, despite the fact that the economy is weak, we're entering into a catch-up phase with our development. And that's because the government put caps on centres for so many years that was unlocked about 5 years ago, but it takes this long to get things moving. So we are literally in for a revolution in Perth with our shopping centres. We are a long way behind. If any of you travel to the East Coast or internationally, you'd know that we're a long way behind. As I say, and despite the economy, there's a lot of national and international retailers that aren't represented in the WA market. So there's going to be no shortage of retailers to lease shops to. What the deals look like at the moment might be a slightly different thing. So in terms of our group, we really see there being, say, two diverse changes here. So you've got your regional centres, which will be, from our point of view, will be the Galleria and Coburn, which will be a regional centre. So it's about how we grow the assets and how we gain market share. Our sub-regional assets at Belmont and Mirrabooka, whilst they might be getting a little bit bigger in some cases, it's not fundamentally so, but it's working on the convenience aspects, the placemaking, the food, and the non-retail side of things. So it's about making them better without necessarily making them bigger, which does have its own challenges. So what does that mean from our point of view? So Belmont, we opened Aldi and JB Hi-Fi about a year ago, which has been going very successfully. That was into an old IGA box. The last third of that IGA box has been turned into a dining precinct, which has just opened. We still have a couple of restaurants to open there, but that's looking pretty good and trading well in the early stages. We've got some Coles work going on at the moment. We're building a new Coles box behind the existing Coles, and we're adding about a dozen specialties. A lot of that will be in fresh food. The fresh food market will come on board Easter next year. So that's around about $75 million worth of work all up. In terms of Coburn, there's nothing to show you in terms of future stages. It really is, it's out past the 2020 mark, but it will hit all the same notes that we've spoken about. So the food and beverage, the fresh food areas, entertainment, additional fashion, those sorts of things. And we get a chance to see what Carousel will do, so we can do it better than you do. At Mirrabooka, as I alluded to, so it's an ongoing thing with Mirrabooka. So it's just about working on our convenience, getting our majors right, getting our mini majors in, and as much non-retail as we can to keep it pumping ahead. And I just saw this today, but I hadn't realised Joe Lenzo's isn't last in line there at the opening of Aldi. So I didn't see you sneak in there, Joe. I would have.
I'll remember that.
And that's it. Thank you.
Wanted to give you a little bit of a background on where things are at, then move through some of the CBD developments, and then in turn some of the disruptions that are going on that we've seen alluded to this evening. First of all, the market's obviously very soft. The CBD is characterised by many different owners with many different objectives, coming in at different times, at different price points, and therefore deals can be done at different rates at different times. So that's very much unlike what happens when you've got a unified shopping centre, which is perhaps the most significant point of difference between the CBD and the suburbs. There's been some long-term vacancy, and that's characterised or at least led from that difference in when people come in. Plaza Arcade's set to get Uniqlo. CBD, however, still remains the benchmark, and I'll get into that in a moment. We have suffered from public infrastructure works, in particular arteries into and out of the city. The sort of things that we tolerate in the CBD perhaps wouldn't be the case if we owned and managed the centre as a whole. And that isn't a shot sideways at the council at all. We've got a lot of state government activities going on in the city that in the longer term will be magnificent for us all, but in the short term there'll be some pain. I mentioned the Forest Chase redevelopment as a short and long term effect. The linear frontage to the Murray Street Mall, it occupies about 35% of the linear frontage. That's progressively being shut down to accommodate a $100 million redevelopment. In the short term, that will cause some unsightliness. In the longer term, I think it will be very positive for the CBD. In terms of comparing the CBD to a shopping centre, well, I think we've got them all covered. We have more majors, they turn over more. We have more mini majors, and that's defined of tenants beyond 400 square metres. We have more shops, more food and beverage options. We have a lazy 5 food courts, and many tenants take 2 shops in the CBD. So the CBD is a very strong and continues to be a very strong marketplace. What are the things activating the CBD? The other thing, you talk about activity centres. The CBD is about to see in the next 18 months 2,300 hotel rooms come onto the market, a number of them 5 and 6 star. What will that do? In my opinion, that will create a very significant night economy. That'll offer some food and beverage opportunities. We all have travelled, and most people, in my opinion, don't eat in their room. They go out and about. So the opportunity, even if we get an oversupply of hotel rooms, the very nature of the way the deals get cut with the Tier 1 hotel operators is such that the operators are incentivised to fill rooms. That will bring people from the suburbs, and it will bring people from the country, and it'll bring people internationally and domestically. And getting a flight non-stop to Europe from Perth, it works the other way as well. So we should start to see a lot of tourism. We're also, unbelievably, don't have a significant cinema complex. We're about to see a Palace Cinema go into William Street at Raine Square. I think we need a megaplex in the city, and I don't think that's far away. We're also about to see bowling. So some of those themes that came up previously in the other presentations, you can see are repeating in the city. We've got some obvious gaps though in those 2 areas. The Perth CBD sits still at about 80% of the first to market opportunity. Whilst H&M went to Joondalup first, and Zara went to Burragoon first, we got them second, and in some other instance, like the Williams-Sonoma business, we got them first. So, and I think the first Uniqlo will open in the city. So, and it trickles down into the other specialties as well. So just running quickly through some of the Perth CBD developments. First of all, Forest Chase, about $100 million being spent, over 3,000 square metres. You might be surprised to hear we've already pre-committed. We've been very quietly going about committing retailers. There'll be some surprises amongst what we've delivered, and there's been some very deliberate condition precedents set in respect of what we need to do and how we need to do it. Bearing in mind that the Myer CBD is the #1 Myer in the state by way of turnover, so it's a pretty significant anchor tenant. And it's, if I had to describe a mall, and I'll call the Murray Street Mall a mall compared to Carousel and the like, how many malls do you get? Zara, Topshop, H&M, Uniqlo, David Jones, Target and Myer in a 100-metre walk? I would say there's one in the state, and that's the Murray Street Mall. Okay, Allendale Square's recently been upgraded, $20 million upgrade. Mirvac have done a magnificent job, very difficult building to retrofit. The underground at Allendale, for those of you that haven't been down, it's worth a look. It's opening in a staged manner, primarily because of a whole lot of building issues down there, but really worked hard at reimagining what could happen in that location. There's some unique things about the CBD. For those of you that haven't been into Allendale Square, it's got 5 arteries connecting through it. On the ground floor, we've put a Mary Street bakery, and we've put a big bar restaurant adjacent to the ANZ Bank, along with some other favourites that are coming back, and some new first-to-market operators going in there as well from the eastern states in the food precinct. Yagan Square, state government initiative, will connect truly the city to Northbridge. That William Street connection I don't think has been heralded enough. That intersection of Wellington and William Street, in my opinion, will be the number one pedestrian location in the state, bar none. It'll rival some of the international cities of the world, and William Street will become a real food boulevard with what Rain Square will be delivering and what 140 has already delivered. The MRA has worked very hard on their placemaking initiatives, and I'm sure more will be rolled out as we go. One of the centrepieces will be that tower you can see in the background there. I'd just suggest, if you've got some time, go on YouTube and have a look at the presentation on Yagan Square. It really is a very significant addition to the landscape of the Perth CBD, and as I said, will connect, and it sits between the train station and the bus station. Something like, I think, 16,000, I might be underplaying, that people come out of that bus station. So that might be number one in the state. Yeah. QV1, we've commenced QV1, renamed the grounds. Significant amount of money being spent on the ground plane there. As I have put it, that will be the lounge room for a very pristine office tower. We've already procured Mary Street Bakery and Quovitas Baby as two anchor tenants, bringing some of the suburbs into the city. We're expecting it to be completed early next year. There's a new daycare facility going in, and it wasn't so long ago that I was sitting at Brookfield Place saying we'll never get a daycare centre fill at 100 children, and now I think we've got 6 in the CBD and end of trip facilities which rival most of our houses. So real big changes up at QV1. Rain Square redevelopment, $150 million overhaul there, Palace Cinemas, reworking all of the retail. As I said, along William Street, that will sit and frame the other side of the street for 140 William. We've got a few ideas at 140 William which I'll come on to, which will create some more laneway connections between those two buildings, but I really believe that part of town will become a really great visitation point for the city. I've already mentioned 140 William, but that started it all really with the redirection. It wasn't 4 years ago that was a failed development. It's now average turnover per square metre is hitting some benchmarks for not only this city but around Australia. And the thing that I'm probably proudest about in terms of what we've done there is we've got some of the national branded names. We brought a retailer, Brotzeit, down from Singapore, but we've also got some very good locals. Cathedral Precinct, much heralded. Obviously Adrian Finney off the back of that has been awarded the West Australian of the Year. 48 suite 6-star hotel. Really made a huge difference to the eastern end of town, which where we're located as an office, adjacent to a 33 level office building. It is world class. For those of you that haven't been to Longchim, Wildflower, it's another level. And in a market where shopping centres and casinos aggressively pursue some of the sort of tenants they've got in there, they've just done a fantastic job. And off the back of that, there's a group of us that are working very hard on, and it'll be a topic for a separate conversation, on Historic Heart. Some work we're going to be doing to the eastern end of town, and I think that's going to really change that part, of which one of the keys will be 480 Hay Street. 480 Hay Street is anchored by approximately a 370 room Western Hotel. For those of you that haven't been up there, the porte-cochere, if you go in, it sort of sits on the side of it. You go in, it overlooks the church, which just is gorgeous at night. The Hibernian Hall will remain. That's what you see at the back. And we'll be redoing the whole precinct, where there will be about 1,000 square metres of F&B, the likes of which you probably won't see in a shopping centre, because part of the job we're tasked with is to come up with an absolute point of difference destination. Got a rooftop bar, a basement we're endeavouring at least to get a basement tavern licence, and then something through the middle, which will be middle to high end. So it will add another layer, and it will certainly change the complexion, as I say, of the eastern end of town. Elizabeth Quay, quickly running through that, I think that'll mainly be F&B, but a significant addition to the CBD landscape. The Ritz obviously will be a cornerstone of that and the first to come, and then Doubletree just behind that. I want to talk quickly about a few changes that are affecting us all, and perhaps just get a little bit thought-provoking about how that might happen. I read a really good quote this morning. There's 3 certainties in life: death, taxes and change. Well, this is the change bit. So the main issues: the economy, the internet, the arrival of the internationals, public works in the city, office vacancies, and some of those conflicting objectives. So we all know where the economy is, I think. It's probably a little bit more dour on a P&L daily basis than we'd all care to admit. Nevertheless, that's one of the major issues we're all facing in planning our developments and making things work, particularly when you can get vertigo from where the market was not 5 years ago. The internet. That's the size of the tech market cap of tech companies: Apple, Google, Microsoft. Interestingly, Amazon is talked about as the biggest threat to retail. I would argue that Alibaba has got every bit of their measure. What I would add is, unlike Westfield, Vicinity, even Lease Equity, haven't paid a dividend. So they're reinvesting all of their money in getting better. And one thing Beros has convinced all his investors is, stay in and give me more, and I'm going to keep growing this because world domination is what I want. And he's getting there. Okay, some of the disruptions, just little things like, we all have probably heard that Domino's in New Zealand are trying drone delivery. There's a retailer in Singapore that's doing drone delivery as well, and just think about how Uber Eats and Deliveroo and the like have disrupted things. Well, the drone delivery might be there. Artificial intelligence. Andrew mentioned, complementing retail, at least the physical retail. The predictive analytics of this artificial intelligence is such that when we go online, obviously there are cookies. It picks up what in an algorithm, the sort of things we like, and it tells us, you might like this, you might like that. And it's really hard to opt out of. Shopping centres will also embrace this. So when you walk in and you're a 15-year-old young girl and you typically buy something at Supre, it might suggest that you also walk into the sale in another store. The virtual reality. Alibaba's already been trialling this with Macy's on their Singles Day. For those of you that don't know, Singles Day is a day that Alibaba came up with a number of years ago. They said, well, Valentine's Day is a really big day. Let's do this thing called Singles Day. To give you an idea, to be in Singles Day, you must give a really cut deep sale. So think about Boxing Day and throw that out and think even more. They move more boxes in one day than Australia Post move in a year. That is the power of Alibaba. The selling experience. So what are the things some people are trying to do? Those that work closely with me say, well, if all the people at Apple are geniuses, how come they never sell you anything? They just keep trying to educate you. That's the new black. It's education, experience, get people on the highway. What else can you sell them? Lululemon trades at a multiple on the Canadian Stock Exchange, which until that happened had never been done before. It's a total immersive experience, and you form part of that culture if you get part of the Lululemon business. They don't sponsor athletes, they have ambassadors, local ambassadors, and Mecca running makeup things and what have you. Other big thing is we've seen a lot of closures in the US, and guess what? We've seen a few here as well, and we're going to see more. Simply put, the barriers to enter retail in Australia are not overly great, and the rules have changed. And one of the reasons it's changed is some of these internationals coming in. We can learn a lot from some of the premium and luxury brands where their fear of erosion, their brand equity, means they would rather destroy the product than sell it. Doesn't sound very familiar in the Australian vernacular, does it? Because we're always on the high-low, sell it on sale. The big difference between my wife and I and our 3 daughters, our daughters know it's always going to be on sale. We didn't. Okay, so, you know, just some images just to show you don't go into a Chanel and look for something on sale. Rugs a million. If it's not on sale, there's something wrong. Okay, international retailers, they typically pay a lot cheaper rent. So the way I would describe it to you is if you're talking to Zara, Topshop, H&M, they don't look for just cheap rent. They say, where's the best location? And I want to pay as little as I can for it. And we build malls around them. Someone's got to pay for it. They're category killers. The reason I say they're vertical ×2, because their speed of movement is quicker than ever before. Landlords have a fear of missing out, FOMO. There's a real hype surrounding them. They've got superior supply chain logistics, and that's a big recurring theme. So what do? Look for some unique independence in your mix. Look for unique selling points. What do we have? You need to really, I think, embrace social media. And in a segue back to people that are at university, you don't have to be doing a valuation degree to come into property. We really need great marketers. We need great PR people. We also need people that are very tech savvy. So it's not just your traditional bricks and mortar thinking. You need to be genuine about your offer. Gen X, Gen Y can see it a mile off if it's not genuine. Complement, don't compete in terms of our mix. The landlord is now a partner because we're forced to be with the retailer. And just like a football team, churn your mix. You don't know when the next Chris Judd's coming through the draft. Thank you.